The twin suns of Zereth's prime burned low in the violet sky, casting long shadows over the once thriving cities. Towering crystalline structures that had shimmered with life now glowed dimly, their energy faltering. A strange silence hung over the planet, broken only by the occasional wail of the wind as it swept across the barren plains. The air was heavy and sweet with the scent of decay. In the central chamber of the Alien Council, an emergency session was underway. The council chamber, usually a place of calm deliberation, now hummed with panic. 3 alien species shared the hall, their features tense and pale. Zerathians with their elongated limbs and translucent skin, Corvians with 6 rotating eyes, and the small, furred Mirathi who perched nervously on the ledges above. All were leaders of their worlds, yet none could hide the fear in their voices. "This plague spreads faster than we imagined," said Counselor Thrin, a Zerathian whose crystalline fingers glimmered as they tapped on a holographic display. "Entire cities vanish in hours. Our healing vessels cannot keep up. Our scientists are dying too fast. Soon nothing will be left." A Corvian spoke, its 6 eyes shifting rapidly. "We sent ships to the outer regions. All returned contaminated. Our biosuits failed. The atmosphere here, poisoned by the disease, kills any non-native life. There is no safe zone. What do we do?" The Mirathi leader, small and trembling, scurried forward. "We must ask for help. Other civilizations must come. There has to be someone who can survive this." A deep silence fell over the chamber. The council had already sent messages to nearby systems, pleading for assistance. Responses came quickly, but all shared the same words. "We cannot risk it. The plague will kill us. We are sorry." The words burned the council. Their world was dying and no one dared help. The Mirathi whimpered. "If we fail, our children, our cities, our entire species, gone. All gone." Counselor Thrin rubbed its temples. "We must try again. There has to be someone who can handle this, someone different." A silent alarm rang across the chamber, signaling a new incoming message from a distant corner of the galaxy. The council scrambled to open it. The transmission was old, rough, and almost illegible, but the words struck terror and hope at the same time. "Do not call us unless it is life or death. Only the Deathworlders can survive. Others will fail. Beware, shadows walk with us." No one spoke. The word Deathworlders was whispered carefully, as if saying it aloud might summon them. "They exist?" asked a Mirathi voice, tiny but urgent. "They are myths," said Counselor Thrin. "Stories told by old explorers. Legends of humans, they say. Creatures who survive worlds that kill everything else. Impossible. And yet..." The chamber fell silent again, heavy with the weight of desperation. Outside, the plague spread like fire. Cities that had once been hubs of art and science were now silent tombs. Streets were empty, markets deserted, and hospitals, if they could be called that, overflowed with the dying. Alien medics worked tirelessly, yet every hour brought more loss. Even the strongest could not survive long. On the edge of the main city, a small child named Kalira wandered through the streets, her translucent skin dimly glowing under the dying sunlight. She had lost her parents to the plague yesterday. Her siblings had vanished in the night. She clutched a small, cracked toy in her hand, moving cautiously through the empty streets. Every corner she turned, the silence screamed louder. The buildings themselves seemed to mourn. Kalira paused near the plaza where a fountain once flowed with crystalline water. Now the water was gone, replaced by a blackened puddle that steamed faintly. She knelt and touched it. The heat burned her fingers, yet she did not cry. Her people had learned too early. Tears could not save anyone. Survival required silence, strength, and cunning. Above the city, the sky was darkening unnaturally. Thick clouds, tinged with green, swirled like a storm. But it was no ordinary weather. The plague itself seemed alive, carried in the wind, infecting all who breathed it. Birds, insects, even small animals, none survived long. The council had called this the Death Wind, a fitting name for a world that had begun to kill itself. Back in the council chamber, the debate continued. "We cannot survive on our own," said a Corvian elder, her voice trembling. "We must find the Deathworlders. If they are real, they are our only hope." "But where do we find them?" asked Thrin. "They are shadows of the galaxy. They do not advertise themselves. They choose when to appear, and always, on their terms." "Then we send a beacon," said the Mirathi, finally finding courage. "We make them know we are desperate. Perhaps they will come." Counselor Thrin nodded slowly. Prepare the transmission. Make it clear, life or death. No lies, no hope of reward, only survival. The transmission was sent, a pulse of light and energy streaking across the galaxy. It carried the urgency of an entire species on its shoulders, a plea unlike any sent before. It reached countless worlds, bouncing through communication arrays and data channels until finally, it faded into the outer edges of known space. Far away, on a planet unlike any other, the message arrived. A harsh, rugged world, where storms raged for weeks without pause, where radiation cracked the ground and toxic clouds scoured the mountains. This was a death world, a place where life adapted or perished. The humans who lived here, hardened, resourceful, and fearless, received the alien plea. They studied it in silence. Their faces, weathered by years of survival in near-impossible conditions, showed no fear, only resolve. These humans had survived hurricanes that flattened continents, poisonous air that burned lungs, and predators that could crush a man in a single strike. They had been called monsters, weapons, legends, but now they were exactly what the galaxy needed. Back on Zarathus Prime, time was slipping away. Each hour brought more death, more cities lost. The Council watched the sky, hoping for a sign. The atmosphere thickened with despair, and yet, deep in the shadow of fear, a spark of hope flickered. "They are coming," whispered a Myrathi child to no one in particular. Counselor Thrin leaned forward, feeling something it had not felt in decades, cautious optimism. "If the Deathworlders arrive, perhaps we have a chance. Perhaps—" The words were interrupted by a sudden tremor. Buildings shook as if the planet itself were screaming. Outside, the wind tore across the city, carrying with it the smell of death. Yet in the distance, faint but undeniable, a glint of metal appeared in the sky, unlike any ship the aliens had ever seen. Sleek, rugged, and imposing, the chamber fell silent. Everyone stared, hearts pounding. The legend had arrived. From the shadows of the galaxy, humans came, and nothing would ever be the same again. The sky over Zarathus Prime was dark and turbulent, a swirling canvas of green and violet clouds. Below, the plague still crawled across the cities like a living shadow, leaving death in its wake. Smoke rose from the outskirts, and streets that had once teemed with life were now empty and broken. The Council watched nervously from the central chamber, their senses heightened with both fear and anticipation. Then, it happened. A low hum filled the sky, a vibration that made the air itself tremble. The aliens had seen many ships in their time, sleek vessels with energy shields, massive carriers bristling with weapons, but this was unlike anything they had ever witnessed. Jagged, angular, yet streamlined. Ships that seemed almost alive as they cut through the deadly atmosphere without faltering. The humans had arrived. On the surface, humans stepped out of their vessels like predators entering a hunting ground, but not in malice. Every step they took was precise, measured, unflinching. Their suits, rough and battle-worn, were layered in adaptive materials designed to survive the extreme conditions of their home death worlds. Gas masks filtered the poisoned air, and reinforced boots protected against corrosive chemicals that would instantly kill ordinary beings. The Council watched from above, awe and terror intertwined. They walk into the plague without fear," muttered Thrin. "How is this possible?" A human, tall and broad-shouldered, knelt to examine a fallen building. With gloved hands, he collected samples of the plague, observing the glowing green spores. He glanced at his companion, a lean woman with scars running down her arms, and spoke in their guttural, simple language. The aliens could not understand, but the confidence in their movements was clear. They were not afraid. Outside, a small Corvian delegation approached cautiously, observing the humans from a safe distance. "They are terrifying," one whispered, 6 eyes blinking rapidly, "yet they do not fear death." The humans moved methodically. They began to map the infected areas, identify patterns, and determine safe zones. Where the aliens had only felt panic, the humans saw challenge. Where others would see poison, they saw opportunity. They even entered structures where the plague was most concentrated, hospitals and laboratories, and came back unharmed, carrying precious samples and scanning devices. Counselor Thrin could not hide the mixture of admiration and fear. "They are survivors unlike anything in the galaxy," Thrin murmured. They thrive where death rules. The aliens had tried everything, medical teams, quarantine zones, even experimental containment fields, but nothing worked. Every intervention failed within hours, and yet the humans adapted instantly. They used chemicals and tools no one recognized, drawing on instincts honed by centuries on planets that would kill any ordinary life in days. As the humans continued their work, the rogue faction that had unleashed the plague watched from the shadows. They had believed that no civilization could survive their engineered virus. Yet these newcomers, these Deathworlders, moved freely through the most lethal zones completely unscathed. The rogue commanders, hidden in orbit above the planet, could only stare in disbelief. "Impossible," one hissed. "No species can survive that exposure." And yet they walk. They thrive. Back on the surface, the humans encountered the first signs of the plague's most dangerous effect: corrupted creatures. Normally gentle wildlife, avian creatures with crystalline wings and small insect-like scavengers, had transformed into hostile, aggressive forms. Their bodies glowed with the same green energy that carried the plague. The aliens avoided them at all costs, but the humans confronted them with ease. Using traps, improvised weapons, and sheer physical prowess, they neutralized the threats without hesitation. In one city, a human operative named Kieran moved silently through the streets. He saw a small Corvian child trapped under rubble, her lungs burning from the poisoned air. Without a moment's pause, he lifted the debris and carried her to safety, placing her in a shielded zone that filtered the toxic atmosphere. The child clung to him, terrified yet unharmed, while the aliens above watched in awe. They save life," whispered the Marathi leader, "even when it is not their own species." "Why would they do this?" Another human, a woman named Solara, approached a decaying laboratory where alien scientists had already died. Using tools that seemed almost primitive, she stabilized samples, recorded data, and even neutralized sections of the plague using a combination of chemical sprays and controlled microfires. Within hours, areas that had been impossible to enter were suddenly safe, proving to the aliens that survival was not luck. It was skill, ingenuity, and courage. The aliens, desperate for guidance, sent envoys to speak with the humans. These envoys, cautious yet trembling, approached the group. "Who are you?" asked one Zerathian delegate. "How can you survive what kills all others?" A human, tall and calm, replied simply, "We come from worlds that would have killed you in hours. We are built for survival. Adapt. Think. Endure. That is all." The council envoys stared, struggling to comprehend. You call yourselves humans?" The human nodded. "Yes, and now we will save your world." Meanwhile, the plague continued its relentless spread. The humans, however, adapted to it with ease. They set up portable filtration units, worked in teams to clear infected zones, and began testing samples to understand the virus's origin. Where alien scientists had failed, humans devised strategies in hours that would have taken others months. Their understanding was intuitive, born from generations of living in extreme, hostile environments. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the humans gathered for a brief meeting, projecting their presence to the council via a holographic interface. The aliens watched as maps, virus samples, and tactical plans were displayed. The humans spoke in simple, direct terms, explaining what had to be done. Contain the plague, neutralize corrupted wildlife, protect remaining citizens, and identify the source. A Corvian elder whispered to Thrin, "They are leaders, warriors, scientists, all in one. I have never seen a species like this." Even the Marathi, who had been terrified since the plague began, felt a small spark of hope. For the first time in weeks, their people might survive. Night fell over Zarathus Prime, but the humans did not rest. Under the eerie glow of the twin moons, they moved through streets that reeked of death and decay, mapping the spread of the virus, setting traps and securing safe zones. Each step they took was confident, fearless, and precise. Where aliens had fled, humans advanced. Where hope had faded, they created it. From orbit, the rogue faction watched with increasing fear. Ships had been destroyed in previous attempts to breach the plague zones. But these humans ignored the danger entirely. "They are not just immune," a rogue commander growled. "They are beyond it. We underestimated them." On the ground, humans encountered their first major challenge: a collapsed city district where the plague had fully mutated. The area was filled with massive spore clouds and corrupted creatures larger than any alien had ever seen. The humans paused, assessing the danger. Then without hesitation they advanced, using their environment to their advantage. They triggered controlled explosions to collapse parts of the infected structures, cleared paths with chemical neutralizers, and fought the mutated creatures with a combination of strength, weapons, and ingenuity. Aliens watched in disbelief. They could not understand how humans survived or why they fought so calmly in the face of death. But slowly hope began to bloom. Survivors were rescued, areas were secured, and the humans' methods began to show results. By the end of the night, entire districts that had seemed lost were stabilized. The council sent a tentative message to the humans. "You are extraordinary. We did not know hope could survive." A human operative responded simply, "Hope survives because we survive. That is all." In that moment, Zarathus Prime began to believe again. For the first time in months, the city was alive, not just in body but in spirit. The humans had arrived from the shadows of the galaxy, and their presence changed everything. The council realized that this was only the beginning. The humans would not just survive, they would lead, protect, and perhaps even defeat the plague in ways no one else could. And somewhere, hidden in the darkness, the rogue faction understood that the game had changed. They had thought themselves in control of life and death, but now they faced beings who were beyond control, beyond fear, and beyond death itself. The legend of the Deathworlders was no longer a myth. It had come to Zarathus Prime, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sun of Zarathus Prime barely pierced through the greenish clouds, casting an eerie glow over the city ruins. Even in daylight, the air was thick with the acrid smell of decay, and the distant wails of the infected reminded everyone that the plague had not yet been defeated. Humans moved through the streets with calm precision, their presence contrasting sharply with the panic that gripped the alien citizens. They were methodical, every step measured, every decision calculated. Where alien scientists had struggled to make sense of the plague, humans adapted instantly. They collected samples, monitored the spread, and tested the mutated creatures' behavior. Every failure taught them something, and every lesson became a new strategy. Kieran, the human operative who had rescued the Corvian child days ago, led a team through one of the worst districts. The buildings were skeletal husks, walls blackened with spores, and the ground littered with the remains of both aliens and corrupted wildlife. He paused, crouched over a sample of the green glowing fungus, and examined it carefully. "This is not natural," he said quietly to Solara, his second in command. "The pattern, it's engineered. Someone wants this planet dead." Solara nodded, her expression serious. "That explains the speed, the mutation. It's intelligent, controlled. Whoever made this knew what they were doing." The council's representatives, observing from a safe distance, could hardly comprehend what they were hearing. "Engineered?" whispered a Corvian delegate. "You mean this was deliberate?" Kieran rose, brushing off the dirt from his gloves. "Yes, someone didn't just want to harm your people. They wanted to make sure nothing survived. They thought they could win through fear, poison, and speed, but they didn't count on humans." As the humans moved deeper into the infected district, they encountered the rogue faction's first direct challenge. Hovering drones, bristling with weapons, emerged from hidden stations in the ruined buildings. Alien energy beams lanced through the air, meant to deter intruders. Humans, however, did not panic. Solara signaled, and Kieran's team split into formation. They used the rubble and terrain as cover, advancing while avoiding the beams. One human threw a small device that emitted an EMP pulse, disabling several drones at once. Others used improvised weapons to neutralize remaining threats. Within minutes, the street was clear. The aliens watching from afar could only gape. These humans moved like hunters through a battlefield that would have killed any other species in seconds. After securing the area, Kieran approached a collapsed building where the rogue faction had hidden more spores. "We need to know the source," he said. "The heart of this plague. That's the only way to stop it." The humans climbed through the ruined structure with ease. Toxic gases hissed from broken pipes. The floors were unstable, and patches of mutated fungus reached upward like grasping hands. But the humans pressed forward. Their senses were honed to extreme conditions. Where aliens saw danger, humans saw opportunities. Inside, they found a laboratory completely sealed off from the outside. Vats of glowing green liquid pulsed rhythmically, and holographic readouts flickered with warnings. Solara approached a terminal and began hacking it, using simple, efficient commands that bypassed complex alien security systems. Within minutes, she had access to the rogue faction's research files. They engineered this to adapt to any countermeasure, Solara said, scrolling through the schematics. Every vaccine, every chemical, every quarantine, they predicted it. They thought they were untouchable. Kieran examined the vats of the virus. Not untouchable. They never accounted for the human factor. We think differently, adapt faster. We use what they don't expect. He began taking samples, carefully extracting the virus in small, controlled doses. The humans' unique biology allowed them to handle it without risk. Even in the rogue faction's traps, they moved freely, completely unharmed. The aliens observing from above were growing more incredulous by the minute. Back at the council chamber, Thrin and other leaders debated. How can they survive what kills us? Asked one Marathi delegate. How can they move through this with no fear, no harm? They are built for it, Thrin replied slowly. We called them legends. We thought it was myth. But they are real. They are stronger, smarter, braver than anything in the galaxy. Meanwhile, the humans had a plan forming. They would not simply cure the plague, they would neutralize it entirely. Using their samples, they synthesized a compound that could target the engineered spores without harming the remaining life. Their methods were a mix of chemistry, strategy, and pure ingenuity. Solara looked at Kieran. We hit the heart tonight. If we're right, this ends now, Kieran nodded. We move fast. Silence, precision, and force. No room for error. The moment they see us as normal targets, it's over. As night fell, the humans advanced toward the largest rogue faction stronghold. It was a fortress of reinforced metal and energy shields, built to withstand storms, explosions, and even the plague itself. Yet the humans approached it as if it were a simple building in their hometowns, analyzing weaknesses and exploiting gaps. Using environmental tactics, they created controlled fires in parts of the perimeter, forcing rogue soldiers into confined areas. They deployed devices that disrupted communications and disabled defenses. Aliens watched in disbelief as humans moved through the strongest defenses with minimal effort. Inside the fortress, Kieran and Solara discovered the main control room, the epicenter where the rogue faction monitored the plague's spread. Holographic maps displayed every infected district, every mutation, every weak point. Humans quickly identified the nodes controlling the virus. Once we hit these, the plague loses coordination, Kieran said. It becomes chaotic and your people can recover. Solara injected the compound into the main control system. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the fortress shook violently. Outside, the plague itself began to lose cohesion. Mutated creatures faltered. Spore clouds dissipated and previously infected districts stabilized. Aliens watching from a safe distance erupted in disbelief and relief. They did it, cried a Corvian delegate. Our people, they can live. The rogue faction, realizing their control was slipping, attempted a counterattack. Ships fired and energy beams cut across the sky. But the humans were ready. Using adaptive shields, guerrilla tactics, and knowledge of the terrain, they countered each strike with precision. In minutes, the rogue faction was forced into retreat. Their plans to destroy Zarathus Prime were shattered. Kieran and Solara stood in the control room watching the screens. The plague was neutralized, the rogue faction defeated, and the alien citizens had hope again. Thrin and the council approached cautiously. You saved our world, Thrin said. You risked everything and nothing harmed you. How can we ever repay you? Kieran shook his head. We don't need reward. Survival is enough. Your world needed help, that's all, Solara added. We came because you were in danger. We do not interfere for glory or power. We do what needs to be done. The council fell silent, realizing the truth in their words. These humans were not just warriors, scientists, or survivors. They were legends made real. They had stepped out of the shadows of the galaxy, and their presence alone had changed the fate of Zarathus Prime. Outside, the alien citizens began to emerge from hiding. Families reunited, children played among the ruins, and hope returned to a world that had almost been lost. The humans moved silently among them, ensuring safety and stabilizing key zones. Their actions spoke louder than words. Courage, intelligence, and unyielding determination could overcome even the most engineered threats. From orbit, the rogue faction withdrew, plotting revenge. But even they understood that they had underestimated the humans. They had assumed no species could survive the plague, and now they had seen the impossible. Kieran looked at Solara as dawn broke over Zarathus Prime. The first light in weeks illuminated a recovering world. "This was only the beginning," he said. Solara nodded. "Yes, but we made the impossible possible. That is what humans do. For the aliens, it was a revelation. For the humans, it was simply another challenge, another obstacle to overcome. And in the shadows of the galaxy, the legend of the Deathworlders grew, spreading quietly among those who had witnessed their courage. The plague had been stopped. The rogue faction had been defeated. And Zarathus Prime had learned a lesson it would never forget. When humans arrived from the shadows, survival, hope, and triumph were guaranteed. Zarathus Prime awoke to a fragile calm. The plague that had once devoured cities now lay dormant, thanks to the humans who had moved fearlessly through the infected zones. Yet the danger was not fully over. The rogue faction, humiliated by their failure to control the virus, still lurked in the shadows, small groups of elite operatives, armed and determined to reclaim control. The council gathered, their faces heavy but hopeful. Councillor Thrin, a Zarathian of distinguished crystal-like skin, spoke gravely. "The plague is neutralized, but the rogues remain. They will return. We must decide how to act." Solara stepped forward from the humans' command center. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the council. "We do not wait. They will strike where you are weak. We move first. Strike fast, strike smart, and end this before they can reorganize." The aliens whispered among themselves, unease in their voices. Humans had already displayed abilities they had never imagined, moving unharmed through lethal zones, neutralizing threats with precision, and defeating the impossible. Yet now they were expected to lead a full assault on enemy forces that had eluded the council for weeks. Kieran, standing beside Solara, laid out the plan. "The rogue forces have 3 main strongholds. We hit them one by one. We use the terrain. We force them into traps. They cannot anticipate us. Their arrogance is their weakness." Thrin's eyes widened. "You would attack them directly? The strongest forces in the sector? With our ships?" Kieran shook his head. "Not your ships. We go small. Precise, we neutralize command centers. Without leadership, they crumble. That is how humans fight, with intelligence, not sheer numbers." The first operation began at twilight. Humans advanced silently through the barren plains outside the rogue faction's first stronghold. Thick forests of blackened trees, toxic yet navigable only by Deathworlders, shielded their approach. Kieran led the team, every step calculated to avoid detection. Drones patrolled the perimeter, but humans anticipated their movement patterns. Small devices were thrown, emitting pulses that temporarily disabled sensors. Within minutes, the team had bypassed the outer defenses entirely. Inside the stronghold, the humans moved like shadows. They neutralized guards without noise, sabotaged weapon systems, and planted devices to disrupt communication. Every action was precise, minimizing risk and maximizing effect. Alien observers, watching from hidden vantage points, could barely comprehend the efficiency of these humans. Hours later, the rogue faction attempted to counterattack from the second stronghold. But the humans had already anticipated this. Using terrain knowledge and carefully planned ambushes, they intercepted the enemy, forcing them into confined spaces where their superior numbers became a disadvantage. Rogue soldiers, skilled and ruthless, fell one by one, unable to adapt to the unpredictable and fearless humans. Meanwhile, Solara and a small team infiltrated the main control hub of the rogue faction. Here, vital information and communication nodes were centralized. The humans hacked the systems with astounding speed, shutting down alerts, rerouting enemy forces, and creating confusion among the rogue ranks. Screens that once displayed strategic plans now flickered with warnings. System compromised. Outside, the aliens were stunned. "They are not just surviving," whispered a Corvian delegate. "They are dominating." Kieran led the team to the core of the stronghold where the rogue faction commanders had gathered. The humans did not hesitate. Using a combination of hand-to-hand combat and adaptive weapons, they neutralized the commanders before they could order a retreat or call for reinforcements. Within hours, the first stronghold was under human control. Rogue forces either captured or neutralized. The second operation was even more daring. Humans moved through a mountainous region, where jagged peaks and unstable terrain had previously prevented any alien assault. Here they used the environment to their advantage. Landslides, set off with careful precision, blocked enemy reinforcements. Toxic gas pockets were navigated with ease, while rogue operatives unfamiliar with such hazards were incapacitated. The third stronghold, located in a canyon carved by centuries of natural disasters, was heavily fortified. It was the rogue faction's final bastion. Yet humans approached without fear. They analyzed patrol patterns, identified weak points in energy shields, and developed a multi-pronged assault that combined stealth, force, and tactical genius. The battle was fierce. Rogue soldiers launched coordinated attacks using advanced weaponry and explosives. Yet the humans adapted instantly. When a corridor collapsed under enemy fire, they used it as a trap, forcing the rogues into confined spaces where escape was impossible. When a squad attempted to flank them, the humans anticipated the move, countering with speed and precision. The aliens watched, mouths agape, as humans moved through the battlefield like specters. They fought not just with weapons, but with strategy, foresight, and an unyielding will. It was not brute strength alone that gave them victory. It was their ability to think, adapt, and endure. At the climax of the assault, Kieran confronted the final rogue commander in a shattered control room. The commander, a seasoned veteran, sneered at the human. "You are just a myth. You cannot defeat me." Kieran's voice was calm, almost bored. "I already have." In a matter of moments, the confrontation ended. The rogue commander was neutralized, his forces captured or fleeing. With the third stronghold secured, the rogue faction was no more. Their dream of controlling the plague and dominating Zarathus Prime was destroyed, and the planet's citizens were finally safe. The council held a meeting afterward, still in disbelief at the humans' efficiency. "We have lived for centuries," said Thrin, his voice trembling with awe. "We have faced wars, disasters, and threats we thought unbeatable. But nothing could have prepared us for this." Solara spoke simply, as always. "We do what must be done. That is how humans survive. That is how we succeed." The alien citizens, emerging from hiding and witnessing the aftermath, were transformed. They saw not just survival, but mastery over death and danger. They watched humans move calmly among ruins, stabilizing areas, aiding citizens, and restoring essential systems. Fear was replaced by admiration, and awe replaced despair. Kieran addressed the council and citizens alike. "This planet is yours. You rebuild, you survive. We only showed you that survival is possible. The rest, your courage, your will, is yours to control." The aliens realized that humans were not just strong, they were more than any single trait. They were adaptable, fearless, clever, and unwavering. They inspired hope not because they claimed glory, but because their actions spoke louder than words. Humans didn't just face death, they thrived where others could not, and they showed that even the darkest moments could be overcome with determination and intelligence. Outside the cities, the plague had been completely neutralized. The air slowly cleared, the mutated creatures that remained were contained, and the planet began the slow process of healing. Alien engineers and citizens worked alongside humans, learning new techniques and strategies, absorbing lessons in resilience and adaptability that would serve their species for generations. From orbit, the remnants of the rogue faction fled, defeated and humiliated. Even their most advanced ships could not match the humans' ingenuity, resourcefulness, and sheer fearlessness. Reports of the humans' methods spread throughout the galaxy, whispers of the Deathworlders' arrival echoing in every corner. The council knew one undeniable truth. The galaxy had changed. Zarathus Prime had been saved, not by superior numbers, weapons, or technology, but by beings who refused to fear death, who adapted to every challenge, and who acted with intelligence and courage. Kieran and Solara stood on a ridge overlooking the recovering city. The first rays of sunlight glinted off the crystalline towers, now free of the plague's shadow. "They'll rebuild," Solara said quietly. Kieran nodded. "They'll rebuild and they'll remember. They'll tell stories. They'll understand what humans can do.
And that knowledge
will protect them in the future." The legend of the Deathworlders had reached its peak on Zarathus Prime. Aliens once terrified of human myths now saw the truth. Humans were not only survivors, they were champions, strategists, and saviors. Where other species faltered, humans excelled. Where despair had taken root, they inspired hope. And somewhere in the galaxy, beyond the borders of known space, other civilizations listened. They would hear of the humans who appeared from the shadows, who moved where others could not, who faced impossible odds and triumphed. The reputation of the Deathworlders, half myth, half legend, would grow ever stronger. For now, Zarathus Prime was safe, its citizens alive and recovering. But the story of the humans, the Deathworlders, was just beginning. And the galaxy would never forget the night that beings from a harsh, distant world arrived and changed everything. The first light of dawn stretched across Zarathus Prime, painting the ruined cities in soft gold. The once toxic skies had begun to clear, revealing the twin suns shining weakly but steadily over the recovering world. Streets that had been silent for weeks were now filled with movement, citizens cautiously emerging from shelters, rebuilding what they could and cautiously exploring neighborhoods that had been abandoned to the plague. Humans moved among them, calm and deliberate, overseeing restoration, distributing supplies and teaching survivors techniques to purify water, treat injuries, and prevent infection. They did not ask for praise, reward, or recognition. Their only purpose was to ensure that life, which the rogue faction had tried to destroy, could continue. Counselor Thrin walked alongside Kieran and Solara, observing the efforts. "It is remarkable," Thrin admitted, his crystalline fingers brushing against the edge of a partially restored bridge. "We feared we would lose everything. Yet here we are, alive, rebuilding, because of you." Kieran shook his head. "We only did what was necessary. You have the tools now, the knowledge. You can protect yourselves. You just need the courage to use it," Solara added, her voice calm but firm. "Every species has the potential to survive. Humans just show what is possible when you refuse to yield." The council nodded, absorbing the weight of their words. For centuries they had faced threats and disasters, yet never had they witnessed a species so fearless, so resourceful, and so utterly relentless. Humans were not like any other life form. They were a force of nature, born from worlds that tested survival at every moment and refined by extreme conditions that would have destroyed anyone else. As Zarathus Prime slowly healed, alien engineers worked alongside humans to repair infrastructure, purify contaminated rivers, and stabilize remaining plague zones. Children who had hidden in fear began to play openly in the streets, their laughter a sound that had not been heard in months. Citizens rebuilt homes, markets reopened, and the scent of cooking fires replaced the pervasive stench of decay. Hope, once almost extinct, was alive again. But humans did not linger long. Their mission had been accomplished. The plague was neutralized, the rogue faction defeated, and the planet's citizens empowered with knowledge and tools to defend themselves. They gathered their teams and prepared to depart. A Marathi child approached Kieran holding a small, glowing crystal. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved my people. You saved my home." Kieran knelt to meet her eye level. "You saved yourselves too," he said gently. "We only showed you how." Solara, watching nearby, smiled faintly. "Remember this. Courage and intelligence can overcome even death itself. That is the human way. Take it with you." The alien's admiration was evident. The council convened one last time to formally acknowledge the humans' efforts. Thrin's voice rang clear in the chamber. "We have witnessed legends. We have seen courage, skill, and intelligence beyond our comprehension. Humans are not merely survivors. They are protectors, teachers, and saviors. This world owes them a debt we cannot repay." Yet, true to their nature, the humans did not claim praise or glory. They nodded, acknowledged the gratitude, and prepared to leave. Their ships, rugged and angular, appeared once more in the violet sky, glinting in the morning sun. The aliens watched silently as humans boarded and prepared for departure, aware that their saviors were about to return to the shadows from which they had emerged. Before taking off, Kieran transmitted a simple message across the city, projecting it on every surface visible to the citizens. "This world can survive. You have the tools. You have the knowledge. Protect it, rebuild it, grow stronger, and remember, courage, intelligence, and adaptation are more powerful than fear. Live boldly. That is what we showed today, the Citizens of Zarathus Prime cheered, a sound that echoed across the recovering cities. Even the council members who had spent weeks in fear and despair felt a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time, they understood what it meant to face death without fear and to triumph. As the human ships ascended into orbit, the rogue faction's remnants fled into distant space, but word of the humans' arrival spread quickly across the galaxy. Alien civilizations, hearing tales of Deathworlders who could survive impossible conditions, defeat engineered plagues, and neutralize the galaxy's most dangerous foes, began to reconsider their own myths and stories. In many worlds, councils debated, who are these humans? Can they be allies, threats, or both? Rumors and whispers of their abilities traveled faster than any ship. Humans had become more than saviors. They had become a legend, a shadowy presence in the galaxy that could appear at any time and alter the fate of civilizations. Back on Zarathus Prime, Kieran and Solara watched the city from orbit for the last time. The twin suns reflected off the crystalline towers, shining like beacons of hope. "It is beautiful," Solara said quietly. Kieran nodded. "It is alive again. And it will stay alive, because the people now know how to fight for it." Solara's gaze hardened. "Other worlds will need help too. Somewhere out there someone will face impossible odds, and we will go." Kieran smiled faintly. "We always do. That is who we are. That is why we are called Deathworlders." As the ships left Zarathus Prime behind, the citizens below watched, inspired, and awestruck. Tales of the humans, tales of beings who could survive death itself, who moved without fear through the most lethal environments, who triumphed against impossible odds, spread quickly. These stories were shared in homes, schools, and markets, and passed down from parent to child. Over time, the humans became immortalized not as rulers or conquerors, but as symbols of courage, ingenuity, and hope. In the council chamber, Thrin reflected on what had happened. "We faced annihilation," he whispered, "and yet, life endured. Not by luck, not by chance, but because of humans. We underestimated them, and we were right to fear their power, but also right to respect it." Children playing in the streets of Zarathus Prime asked their parents about the humans. Parents explained, speaking carefully, so their awe would not become envy or fear. "They are legends," they said. "They walk where death rules. They come from worlds so harsh they could survive anything, and they choose to help when others cannot." Across the galaxy, the rogue faction's surviving members trembled at the news. They had faced death and defeat at the hands of humans, creatures they had assumed were myths. And yet here they were, alive, strong, and untouchable. Whispers of Deathworlders spread through every military command, every council, and every colony. One thing became clear. The galaxy had changed forever. The humans themselves remained in the shadows, leaving only evidence of their deeds and the knowledge they had shared. They had no need for recognition or reward. Their work was not for glory. It was for survival, for justice, for the impossible, and where there was danger, wherever species faced annihilation, there would always be humans to appear from the shadows. Zarathus Prime recovered slowly but surely. Cities were rebuilt stronger, defenses were improved, and scientists learned from the humans' techniques. The memory of fear faded, replaced by pride in their resilience and a deep respect for the Deathworlders who had changed their fate. Statues and memorials were erected, not to glorify the humans themselves, but to remind future generations of the power of courage, adaptability, and intelligence. Finally, as the human ships vanished into the depths of space, the aliens understood a profound truth. In a galaxy filled with fear and uncertainty, humanity was a force that could not be ignored. They were not rulers. They were not conquerors. They were legends, shadows of hope and triumph, beings who embodied the very best of life itself. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, other civilizations listened. They heard of Deathworlders, humans who survived worlds that would kill gods, who defeated engineered plagues, who struck fear and awe into the hearts of those who witnessed them. The story of Zarathus Prime would be the first of many, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson. When humans appear, even from the shadows, life has a chance to endure, and hope becomes unstoppable. The suns of Zarathus Prime shone brighter, now reflecting not just light but the resilience of life itself. Humanity's shadow moved on, leaving legends, hope, and inspiration across the stars. And in that quiet, triumphant moment, one truth became undeniable to all who witnessed it. Humans were unstoppable, not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to yield, refused to fear, and refused to fail. The legend of the Deathworlders was born,